The Hoop Heads Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hey Hoopheads! Wanted to take a minute to shout out our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market, and they truly accelerate skill development faster than ever. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Also, make sure to check out the new Dr. Dish Home Machine, which is perfect for these crazy times when gyms and schools are closed. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Danny Gallagher, girls varsity head coach at Magnificat High School, and you're listening to the Hoop Heads Podcast.
Hey Hoopheads, we all hate ankle sprains, and they happen way too often. Ankle injuries are the #1 sports-related injury. Arise is trying to change that. With the iFast, your athletes get preventative protection and full mobility. Athletes no longer need to wear bulky braces that limit performance and give mediocre protection. Anyone playing sports should be using these products. Keep your athletes in the game. Don't wait for them to get hurt to take action. Visit www.arise.com, spelled A-R-Y-S-E, and use the code HOOPHEADS to get 20% off the future of performance. That's ARYSE.com with promo code HOOPHEADS to get 20% off.
We tell recruits this. I mean, I think this is a real thing. I'm not afraid to say it. We want to win on the national level. We want to compete nationally. We want to, we want to get to the Final Four. We want to win a national championship.
Tom Heil is the head men's basketball coach at Baldwin-Wallace University in Berea, Ohio. In his first 5 seasons, Heil, who was the lead assistant under former Yellow Jacket head coach Duane Sheldon for 5 seasons, has compiled an 84-54 record and has led the Yellow Jackets to 2 OAC Championship games and 1 semifinal. In 6 seasons as a college head coach, Heil has 5 straight winning seasons, a 106-61 career record, 3 conference championship game appearances, with 1 regular season league title, 2 tournament titles, and a pair of berths in the NCAA Division III National Tournament. Heil returned to BW in the spring of 2015 after serving as the head coach at Defiance College for 1 season. He led the Yellow Jackets to a 22-7 record, including a 15-0 mark at home. Defiance captured both the Heartland Collegiate Athletic Conference regular season and HCAC Tournament titles. Heil guided his team into the NCAA Division III National Tournament, where it posted the school's first ever NCAA Division III National Tournament victory by knocking off the defending national champions. Prior to his experience at Defiance, Heil served as the main assistant for head coach Duane Sheldon. In 5 seasons on the BW coaching staff, Heil helped guide the team to a 58-44 record. Heil came to BW for the first time after serving as an assistant coach at Defiance from 2007 to 2009. Heil played 4 seasons of varsity basketball at Bluffton University. During his time with the Beavers, Heil was twice named to the academic All-HCAC team. He also captained the 2006-2007 squad that finished with a school record-tying 18 wins. Don't miss our free Hoopheads Pod webinar series on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. If you miss a live webinar, you can buy lifetime access to any of our previous webinars for $4.99 on the Hoopheads Pod website. If you're focused on improving your coaching and your team, we've got you covered. Visit hoopheadspod.com/webinars to get registered. Make sure you check out our new Hoopheads Pod network of shows, including Thrive with Trevor Huffman, Beyond the Ball, the CoachMaze.com podcast, Players Court, Bleachers and Boards, and our team-focused NBA podcasts, Cavaliers Central, Grizz and Grind, Nuck If You Buck, and the 305 Culture Miami Heat podcast. We're looking for more NBA podcasters interested in hosting their own show, centered on a particular team. Shoot an email to info@hoopheadspod.com if you're interested in learning more and bringing your talent to our network. Grab a pen and paper so you can take some notes as you listen to this episode with Tom Heil, head men's basketball coach at Baldwin-Wallace University. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here without my co-host Jason Sunkel this evening, but I am pleased to be joined from Baldwin-Wallace University, the head men's basketball coach, Tom Heil. Tom, welcome to the Hoopheads pod.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. We are thrilled to be able to have you on, get a chance to talk some hoops with you. Want to start out by going back in time to when you were a kid. Talk to us a little bit about how you got into the game when you were younger.
Man, I as far back as I can remember, and I don't really know what age that would be, but I loved hoops. I think I was really fortunate to grow up the way I did, probably on the back end of how you grew up. And I don't know, I was probably on the last of the generation that grew up playing outside. And my first memories are in my driveway and at the park, shooting on a hoop, double rim in the wind by myself. That's kind of
the way it should be. The way it should be, Tom.
The way it should be, man. I miss that. I don't know how that's how I want my son to grow up. I don't know how we're going to make that happen, but as far back as I can remember, I loved basketball. It was just my favorite thing to do. And that continued really through my whole childhood. I was fortunate to grow up in a house where we didn't really have video games and much. I mean, we had some video game systems when I was a kid, but I don't know. I think I stunk at them. So I didn't spend a lot of time doing it. So I really grew up outside, and basketball was we did it all, but basketball was a really, really, really big part of that. And then my first real memories of watching basketball on TV was, those early 90s Cavs.
Okay.
And Mark Price and Larry Nance and Craig Elo and Hot Rod Williams and those teams. Those are like my first memories of actually watching, basketball on TV. And that's why the Last Dance was such a needed documentary for me during quarantine, man. Like, that took me down memory lane for really my first memories. And I was so young at the time, man. I learned a lot. I did not realize that the year of the shot, the Cavs beat them 6 times. They were 6-0 in the regular season. So my memories are those are like the very first memories, but that was when I think I really started to kind of fall in love with hoops. And I don't know that I was great. I did it all the time. I was really competitive. And once I got to high school, I was really fortunate. I went to Hoban and played for a really good high school coach. I think everybody probably feels that way about their high school coach, so I'm no different. And I know I'm biased, but I really, 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 really had a great one. And he had a major impact on my life. And I think it was around that time, like 9th grade, when I started to want to be good, like really, really want to be good and learn how to win and what it took. And I think the first coach to really instill like some discipline, and I was probably a 14-year-old, pretty arrogant little dude. And I was really fortunate to play for a great, great, great man. And I had 4 great years of high school at Hoban. And unfortunately, I'm the same age as LeBron. So that's like the worst time to be playing high school basketball in Akron.
Or the best, I guess. You can always you can always hang your hat on the fact you got a chance to play against them, which is good.
Yeah, it was really, looking back now, obviously incredibly, incredibly cool. At the time, it really sucked.
Yes,
they were in our district, and that was not a fun game. As you can imagine, it didn't really go too well for me or the Hoban Knights, but. I had a great experience in high school, and I knew I wanted to play in college. And that's, as you know, I've kind of heard you on a few podcasts talk about that journey of being recruited is just strange. And you don't really know when you're 16, 17, 18 years old. We all think we can play Division I. In that process, for me, you start to realize, like, all right, nobody's calling me. These other guys are getting offers. Like, I don't know how's this going to work. So I had the journey that I think most good high school players have, kind of the realization that if I'm going to continue to play, it's probably going to be at the Division III level. And I was fortunate just to get recruited. I think I got recruited because I played on a really good high school team. And I had a great high school coach, and I ended up at Bluffton, which is in Northwest Ohio, small school, Division III, and was honestly probably the journey most guys go through when they get to college too. Like, I was a pretty average college player. I don't know that I did anything exceptionally well. I think I was, okay at everything, and had a role coming off the bench on, pretty much my sophomore through senior year. But I only started a couple games because of injuries, and I was pretty much a role player and got to play with really good players and had a great experience. And in a lot of ways, I think if you're going to coach, I had the ideal role as a college player. When you get to be a college coach, I was never even close to being a star. I've been in most roles. I played in JV games. So I had a pretty, as far as setting myself up to be a college coach, I think I had a pretty special experience in college. I played for a great, great, great man as well in college, who was really, really, I think, pivotal in my journey to then go on to be a college coach. So the journey as a player was fun, man. When it comes to an end, it really stinks, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'm 35 now, and I'd love to change places with our guys, but in a nutshell, that's kind of the journey as a player. I was really, really, really fortunate, I think, to be in the right place at the right time with some teams, and I had a great experience and played on some good teams. And, I don't think I was anything special ever as a player, but had a great, great, great opportunity as a player to set me up to be a coach.
Absolutely. I want to unpack a couple of things that you said that stuck out to me when we were talking. One was when you mentioned how you got to ninth grade, and you said at that point you thought, hey, it's time for me to start to take this a little bit more seriously and really begin to work at the game. So what did that look like, both from a mindset shift perspective and then in terms of what you actually physically did or mentally did to prepare yourself to be a high school basketball player? Just in case there's a player out there listening who says, boy, I really want to take that next step in my game. Just what did that mean to you that you started taking the game more seriously?
I think I started, I think what happens to a lot of young people when they get to high school, kind of got punched in the mouth a little bit. I played JV as a freshman. So I basically from like the first practice on, I was practicing with the varsity guys, and probably played in 5 or 6 varsity games my freshman year, but somewhat baptism by fire. I mean, I was going against a Big Ten wide receiver and some guys that I wasn't physically ready to compete against. So I think learning how to compete and what I was kind of all about, like, I don't know that I'd really ever had to do that and compete at that level like I had to compete in those practices. And the other piece was like, I think I was pretty skilled and loved to work on my game and be in the gym and shoot. But I don't know that I had any understanding of what went into winning and what it takes to win, to be a complete player, to really impact the game. And all of the ways you can do that outside of the box score and how many points I had and how many, assists I had. I mean, there's a lot of ways to impact the game. And I don't know at that point in my life, I do know, I had no idea what that was about. I really didn't. I didn't know how to play hard. I think I had an okay, probably knowledge of how to play, but I had no knowledge of really what it took to win. So I remember that, man. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the only time in my life that I've thrown up from exercising or running or whatever was my freshman year of high school. And it's a funny story. And I didn't know any better. And we were kind of, at the time, a little dysfunctional as a team, and high school coach got real mad at us and put us on the line, and we've all been there, right? And
Yep.
I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm like 25 practices into my high school career. So I have no idea what's coming. And we ran a down and back, sprinted a down and back. And if you won, you were out. And I actually did this with the team within the last couple of years, and because I remembered about this. But yeah, I'm sure he was teaching us to compete. We weren't competing. And so I take off the first couple, and Mike, when I say I have no chance of winning these first couple, I mean, I have no chance of winning these first couple. But I ran like it. I just didn't know any better. I was so competitive. So I ran like it. And man, after about 4 of them, I'm like, man, I'm in trouble. And, I was the last one. I was the very last one. I gave everything I had. I did a very poor job as a competitor of like strategizing how I was going to do this. But I remember that like it was yesterday. I didn't at Hoban from the gym. You have to go down 2 flights of stairs to the locker room, and right there in between the 2 flights, man, that's when it all, I didn't make it. Yeah. Yep. But I do remember that. I remember being a freshman and going through that process and realizing how long I had to go. And that was a huge year for me because I came back as a sophomore and was a starter, and nobody thought that. I don't think that our coach thought I had a chance to be a starter. And, but that was that slap in the face. I was really fortunate. I grew up in a house that when that happened, I had, my parents were just the kind of people that were like, well, you better get better, man. If you want to play, you better get better. And that was, I think, a really big pivotal moment for me to kind of learn to take some ownership and just get to work.
And so when you say get to work, what does that mean? What does that look like in that summer between your freshman and sophomore year? What did you do? Were you playing, obviously playing some pickup games? How did you go about figuring out what you needed to work on or what kind of drills you were going to do? I always say that when I was playing, I would do the same workout basically every day from the time I was in high school through my 4 years of college. When I was working out on my own, I did the same hour-and-a-half workout every single time I did it. Now I look at just the variety and the things that are out there and how much I would have eaten all that stuff up to be able to have access to all those resources to try different things and to work on different parts of my game. So just talk to me a little bit about how you got the plan together for what you were going to do to improve.
Yeah, I wish I had what a lot of these kids have now. I think that's why there's so much skill especially with the basketball in their hands now. Kids they're good at that stuff, and there's a lot of people out there that can help them. But I don't know that I did a good job of that. The biggest thing for me was the weight room. I mean, that was the first time that I had been really introduced to really lifting weights at all. And it was a big part of, I think, just the athletic culture at Hoban. And it was just kind of the expectation for the first time in my life. So I just realized pretty soon, like physically, I'm kind of getting manhandled by some of these juniors and seniors my freshman year. And if I wanted to have a chance to compete, like I needed to make the most of my physical abilities. I mean, I was not a top tier athlete within our gym. So the weight room honestly was a huge part of it. And I played every day. I remember this was when going to the park was a thing. I mean, we had some unbelievable games. I would go all over, man, all over the Akron area. Like there was a great park in Stowe, Silver Springs that had great games. I mean, I remember some of the Kent guys being there. This was like when they weren't there all summer, all the time. Yeah,
right, exactly. It's so different now. It's so
different. And getting to play those games, I think I was better by that point. So I was playing against men all summer. And that's probably where I grew up the most. After that freshman year was just learning, like, man, if I'm going to play against these guys, like I got to know how to play. I need to figure out ways to score against grown men. I got to like toughen up a little bit. I mean, these guys are going to eat me alive if I don't learn to stand up for myself. And all of those things that I think you learn at the park that I don't know that kids have as many opportunities to do that. I really, really, really did that. I don't know, Mike, that I was that intentional about it.
It was just fun, right? It was just fun.
It was just fun. I just loved to play. And I remember getting in a lot of hot water at home, like coming home like later than I was supposed to, especially before I could drive. which
right.
I was young. I didn't really drive until I was a senior. So like I would kind of be stuck at the park until like 10:30, 11 o'clock, whenever the lights went off. I don't really remember back. It was a while ago, but I remember coming home and taking some, I just wore it. I was like, it was worth it to me. Like, hey, maybe I might take some heat when I get home from my dad, but man, I'd love to play a couple more games.
No, I can totally relate to you. It's one of the things it's a theme that runs through the podcast with me, is just the fact that playground basketball culture, that playground basketball experience that existed, what you're talking about, just doesn't exist anymore. And sure, you can sometimes find pickup games, but you're not going to find pickup games where you have high quality, high caliber players from the high school and college, and then adults who maybe played in college or were good high school players, or just guys who are great recreational pickup basketball players. Those places, if they do exist, they're so few and far between. And that's not to bemoan completely the system that we have today, because I think there are a ton of positives for kids in terms of their development and things. You mentioned it in terms of their skill. But I do think that there's something to be said for being able to play out on the playground, play against people of all different ages, especially playing against older adults and college players when you're in high school. To me, there's nothing better to prepare you for what you're going to face out on the floor than that. And I could argue that probably to my grave. I know that system's not coming back for a lot of societal reasons and whatever, but I feel bad for kids today, players today, that they don't get to experience what you and I got to experience. Just the culture of the playground, the friendships that I built, the experiences that I had, like everything that you're describing are all things that when you say those things, it just, the memories of basketball, the positive memories that I have just come flooding back. And I think, to your point, it wasn't necessarily that it was an intentional, act on your part to try to get better. It was just, man, I love to play basketball. I love playing in good games against good competition. And that's where this happens. And yet the byproduct of it is you get better. But the reality is you just did it because you love to hang out and play basketball. And that is really what it comes down to. And
I don't care what level you're playing at. I really think that matters. Finding you have to find joy in it, because I'm sure, for you, probably even more than for our guys at BW or when I was a player, it can feel like, because it is hard, it's a lot of work, and it can feel like work. But I just think it's incredibly important as a coach. I think it's incredibly important for anybody that would be listening that is a player. You have to find joy and not lose that. I don't care if you're, an NBA guy that's, you're LeBron and you're in year 17 or whatever of your NBA career. I mean, finding that process is probably cyclical. I mean, it comes and it goes a little bit, and you have to work harder at times to find the joy, but you got to do it. And there was no better way for me to do it throughout my entire playing career than going back to the park and playing.
Yeah,
even when I was a college
100%.
player in the summer, it was like you fall back in love a little bit. It's like a relationship in any relationships. And I feel like that was a huge part of my relationship with basketball and how I would fall back in love with it if I ever felt that slipping a little.
Yeah, and I think that's something interesting too, Tom, when you think about the contrast, and you mentioned it a minute ago, the contrast between the Division III setup and the current Division I setup. Because when I was playing, summertime, our season ended, and literally the next day I would be in the annex at Kent playing pickup basketball just to rejuvenate my love for the game. And then I was handed a 3-page ditto sheet of, here's your workouts for the summer. We'll see you back here in August. And that was it. I didn't see any of the coaching staff all summer. So I went home and played pickup basketball, and I played in the Cleveland Pro-Am League and all these different things. And to me, that regenerated, as you said, practice at the Division I level. It was tough. There were a lot of days where it wasn't as fun as I would have wanted it to be, but there were so many good things that came out of that as well. But you have to continue, as you said, you have to fight for that love of the game that we all have when we're growing up. And I think when you think about what you have at BW and the Division III system, where, yeah, sometimes as a coach, I'm sure it's frustrating that you can't have that contact on the court with your guys in the off season. I'm sure as a coach, there's party that's man, I wish I could get more time with our guys in the off season. But yet I think that the the Division I system right now, the way it's set up, and I've talked to a couple of our Division I guests about that, is it almost seems to me like 11 months out of the year, hearing those same voices in your ear day after day after day, off-season workouts, and then the preseason and conditioning and all the way through the season. That just seems like it's got to be an incredible grind on those players and the coaches. I think, some of the coaches have said the same thing, that like they love having the time with their guys, and yet at the same time, it can get to be a grind because you just never step away from it to sort of rejuvenate that love. So maybe just maybe this is a good time to just kind of talk about how you approach that off season with your guys in terms of making sure that they're doing the things that you need them to do, but yet also they're getting a break, they're getting a step away from you, and you're getting a step away from them.
Yeah, that's, I think, a great point. I would agree. A lot of guys I know at the Division I level, man, I mean, they need a break. Players do, and so do coaches. It's a lot. And I wish we had a little bit more at our level. Like, I think there's a happy medium. Whatever that might be, a few hours a week was for some skill stuff in the fall and the spring, I think would be a big, big, big deal. I don't think they need to change anything about the summer. I think it's great that our guys have the opportunity to really do some stuff in the summer that, I don't know, maybe Division I guys don't have the chance to do. I mean, they get to have some pretty special internships and things that lead to great opportunities for them professionally when they graduate. And then they also, most of our guys are Northeast Ohio guys. They play in a summer league together in a normal summer. They didn't obviously this summer because of the pandemic, but there's a lot more of it is just on them. And I think really, Mike, that starts with us in recruiting. Like, we try as hard as we possibly can to find guys that are committed to basketball. And I probably say love basketball more than I should, because I think like that relationship when you like a lot of everybody loves basketball when they get to college. And I think we need guys that once they get to college and they're on their own and there's a lot more freedom for them as far as the choices that they make, we need guys that are going to stay committed to being serious and good as a player, and their development, a lot of their development is in their hands. And we really, it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do. That's one of the hardest things to evaluate. Sometimes, frankly, we've just been fortunate and gotten lucky, but I don't mind our off season the way that it is in a lot of ways. I think it's healthy. I think it provides some balance. I mean, I can't imagine them listening to me for 11 months. I really can't. I mean, I feel like after the fall and winter and we get to the spring at the end of our season, I mean, we're really aware of that as coaches. Like, man, I'm sure these guys are tired of hearing me say the same things over and over and over. I mean, we try to do a good job of balance that out. I think the relationship piece is something we work at really, really hard. We're as intentional about the relationships as we are about, the skills that we want our guys to be able to, and fundamentals that we want them to execute on offense and defense. I mean, we're pretty intentional about the relationships, but the season's a grind as it is. So I think that balance and us them being able to get away and hopefully get back in the gym, like you said. I mean, when our season ends, I usually tell them I don't want to see them for a few weeks and, just let them do their thing. And almost always our guys are back in the gym the next day, kind of doing what you were talking about when your season ended at Kent, like back, in like the rec, playing some pickup. I mean, That's, I think our version of that. And I think if that's the case, it means you have the right guys. You've got guys that their relationship with basketball is a pretty committed one. I'd love a little bit more time with our guys to be able to work with them in the fall and the spring, but I think it's a healthy system for guys to stay committed and stay in love with the game.
All right. So how do you, in the recruiting process, what kind of questions do you ask? Who do you ask those questions of? And then what kinds of things are you looking for that maybe give you a clue to what types of guys are going to stay committed to basketball, as you said, once you bring them into the program?
Man, that's the question right there. And I think I'll try to articulate it the best I can. But to start, really hard. I don't know if this is always this way or whatever. I think we have so many relationships with coaches, and especially in Northeast Ohio, that we're fortunate that I feel like they're very honest with us about that. We always go through the high school coach. I mean, I think that's our best resource to really get an idea of what the young man we're interested in is like on a day-to-day basis. I don't know. I think AAU coaches are people that we will certainly have relationships with and talk to, but we know so many more high school coaches, and I think there's such great high school coaches in Northeast Ohio. I think that's kind of where it starts. The other thing that I would really emphasize is the parents, what that relationship with is like, number one, and how basketball fits into recruit, mom, dad. Like, where does basketball fit in for them and their family? Like, we've had a lot of, I think, success with parents that were athletes themselves. They don't seem to be as caught up in it as parents that weren't.
Isn't that funny? Like, I think that's 100% true, Tom.
It
is.
I
think that, and I'm not sure. Well, I mean, I guess I know the answer to why that is. I think when you do something yourself and you've had an understanding of kind of what it takes, then I think you realize that most parents, at least in my experience, both just people that have played with my kids or just people that I know that are my friends, I think what you find is that they understand that if you're going to make it to be a college athlete in whatever sport it might be, that's driven not by the parent, it's driven by the athlete. And so I think those parents kind of understand that, look, I can provide opportunities for my kids to play basketball or be a soccer player or play football or whatever it is. But ultimately, whether or not my child gets an opportunity to play college athletics or heck, even high school athletics, it's not up to me as the parent. It's up to the kid to put in the time and the effort and have the love and all the things that we were talking about. So I think that's 100% spot on in that those parents, I think, tend to take a step back who are athletes themselves because they understand that it's not about the parent wanting it, it's about the athlete wanting it.
And that evaluation, like trying to evaluate that, I think is probably been as consistent as anything with the kid that is driven himself to be good. And when we get them, that work just accelerates because they have more opportunity, I think, to work on their game. And beyond that, I don't know, trying to really recruit good people from good families. I think that's the best we can do to try to evaluate that. It's really hard. Everybody that you talk to is going to tell you that he's or whoever we're looking into or recruiting is working hard. I mean, they're the best player most of the time. I mean,
right.
It's kind of easy to work hard. We need guys that, and I think the family is a big part of that. What kind of family they come from, that when they get to college and it's not easy, and they're not just the best player, that they're going to continue to work like a guy that wants to be a starter well before they actually have a chance to do that. I think that's a big deal at our level. I think it's more common for guys to settle in and accept, like, all right, we start practice. I'm not in the rotation the first few games. This year's probably not my year. This guy's got to graduate. And I just think it's more common for guys to kind of fall into that and not, because so much of that work has to be done outside on their own. Outside of practice, we really try to be intentional about getting guys that are going to work regardless of what their role is going to be and making that a big deal and a part of our program. And it's hard, man. That's hard. It's hard. It's a hard thing to consistently get right. And we just try to do that every day and constantly be evaluating that. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job. We've got guys that I'm really, really excited about and are pretty committed to basketball right now.
All right, I want to ask you this question to follow up on that, and then I want to jump back to something on the recruiting piece of it. How do you engage those guys who are on your roster, who are a part of your team, but who are not part of your regular rotation? So guys, let's say 10 and up on your roster. How do you, over the course of the season, in practice, in games, how do you recognize what those guys are contributing in order to keep them feeling like they're a part of what you're doing? Because we all know as coaches that it's easy, especially as the season goes on, to lose sight of what those guys are going through and the contributions they're making because we're so focused on the kids who are actually going to get out on the floor and play for us and determine whether we win or lose. So how do you engage those guys at the back end of your bench?
Yeah, great question. Try to be intentional about the relationship. Number one, we really try to be intentional about separating, coaching you as a basketball player and you being in our program and us loving you and trying to help you, get your degree and become a man, which is really what it's all about. And I think that I have really good assistants. And if I'm going to be honest, Mike, I think they do a really good job of that without me having to tell them how to do it or what to do. It's just they're from a relationship standpoint, in an intention standpoint, and a coaching standpoint. I mean, you're right. Most of my time and effort once we start our season is surrounding our rotation guys and figuring out how the pieces are going to fit together and how do we become the best version of ourselves, this season. And I have great assistant coaches. Like my full-time assistant is the real deal. And he's like family to me, and he's an incredibly important, if not the most important part of our program when it comes to everything, to recruiting, to those relationships that you talked about. Like if he's not around, I don't think those players 10 and up on the depth chart, I don't think they feel anywhere near as engaged without him. And then we have a great part-time assistant who is incredibly invested in our program as well. And so I think it starts with having great assistants. And number two, I think we really value people that bring energy and are consistent with that energy and are fun to be around. And those guys a lot of times are that. And it's why they stick it out. They're just naturally, they lift people up, they're fountains, not drains. And they're those type of people. And I think because they're those type of people, it's easy for me to acknowledge the contributions that they make, even though they don't show up necessarily on a box score or whatever. It's easy for me to acknowledge those contributions on a daily basis because it's easy to see. And they're not feeling sorry for themselves. And I think relish the opportunity to be in their role. I mean, we just graduated 8 seniors, and a couple of them have never been in the rotation. And, their role basically for 4 years was like scout team, and they were incredible. I mean, they can tell you most of the things that most OAC teams are running and probably can do it, to this day. And I just think that really matters. I think that's how winning is done. Like, I think those guys, if you're going to have a connected group that's going to overachieve, those guys at the end of the bench, like they really, really, really matter and impact winning. And I think being able to have great assistants that keep those guys engaged. And then I think it's my job as the head coach to continue to acknowledge those contributions, even when they don't necessarily show up to people outside of our inner circle.
So when you say acknowledge, what does that look like? So if I'm the 11th man on the team and I'm having a great day of practice with whatever, my enthusiasm, or maybe I'm playing really well on a particular day, or I'm supposed to be part of the scout team and I'm executing what I'm supposed to be doing perfectly. What does acknowledgement look like? Is that verbal praise in front of the team? Is that putting an arm around a kid on the way off the practice floor? What does that acknowledgement look like?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it happens a lot on a relationship one-on-one standpoint. And then I think it's incredibly valuable when you can do it in front of a team. And when I think it gets really special is when it doesn't come from me. When it comes from our players and the leaders on our team, I think to acknowledge that, we give guys opportunity to kind of do that at the end of practice. If they have, something to say about somebody that did a good job. And I think those opportunities, I think are really special. And it's hard because the best way to reward a guy is to put him on the floor and,
right.
and to reward him with playing time. So it's hard because I don't want to be, I believe in being authentic and genuine and saying what I mean and meaning what I say. And I don't want to be, building and lifting a guy up just to do it. And then he's sitting there thinking, well, like, dude, you never play me. I'm doing all these things that you're talking about. So I think those conversations need to be honest, and guys need to be able to accept that, like, hey, you're not the best athlete, and you're whatever, your skill level in certain areas isn't good enough, but like the way you're competing every day at practice is a big deal. And it's really, I don't know if your ceiling's as high as, the guys ahead of you. It's certainly most likely not. But man, like in a big picture life standpoint, how valuable is it to be that guy when things aren't going your way? Like you bring it every day and you're a great competitor and you're a great teammate. So, I think the biggest goal we have in our program is like to be the best teammate. So we try to reward that and lift that up as best we can. But like the bottom line is, we're going to play the best guys.
Right.
And that certainly matters. It can help a guy get on the floor, but it's a really delicate balance. And frankly, that's why you need good people. You can't win without good people. If those guys at the end of the bench are idiots and they're acting like idiots and they're kind of behind the scenes sabotaging what you're trying to do, you're never going to have a chance to be any good. And not when it matters, not at the end of the season, not in the conference tournament, not against the best teams on your schedule. You're never going to have a chance to win those games.
And I think that goes back to what you said 5 minutes ago about evaluating the kid and the parents, because anybody who has not been involved in athletics, I don't think that they understand the negative impact that players 10, 11, and 12 can have on a team if those guys spin the wrong way, for lack of a better way of saying it, in that if those guys are complaining, if they're, getting after the other guys on the team and saying, oh, coach doesn't know what he's doing, and they bring a bad attitude with them every day, people from the outside who haven't been involved in athletics might say, well, who cares? Those guys aren't playing anyway. Just focus on the guys that are out on the floor. But you and I both know, and any parent who's been through an athletic situation and played on a team themselves, especially the higher level you've gone up, I think you understand that those players at the end of the bench, if they are dragging everybody else down, it can make what could otherwise be a very positive situation turn negative really, really fast. And I think good coaches and experienced coaches and coaches who have been successful understand how important it is to keep those guys at the back end of the bench engaged, not only for the benefit of the team, but also, as you said, for the benefit of those kids as people in the long term.
Absolutely. It's the right thing to do. And that's just the way we try to operate. And I know I can do a better job of that at times, but it is something we think about and try to be super aware of on a day-to-day basis. And we'll watch and film our bench and evaluate and talk about that with guys, and I know that might sound a little corny, but how their engagement is while we're playing. Like I've been pretty upset at times and got upset with guys when, the camera's on them and you can tell their body language. They have no interest in even being there. And those moments I think are great coachable moments. And a lot of times guys might not necessarily realize that they're giving that off, but that's a big, big, big deal. And we say this, sometimes I say this because it is true. You spend so much time as a coach, over analyzing like who we're going to dress, and if we, depending what our numbers are going to be,
right.
We spend a ton of time and energy going over that stuff. To the point where it's nauseating and back and forth and who should dress and how many we should dress and how many we travel, and because we care. And I just think that's an important part of the process. And if we didn't care and those decisions, we didn't give them all the, dialogue and time, I'm sure I wear my assistants out with it, but ultimately it's my decision and I want to do the due diligence because it's a big deal to me. I want it to be a big deal to the kids, and those guys matter to us, and they really, really do. I think that's part of having a great program at our level, especially, is the development and engagement of those guys. We have guys that are going to have what I think will be major roles for us this season that were in that position last year as freshmen. And to me, that's what a program's all about. We need to continue to do that. And I think the structure we provide, the processes in place on a day-to-day basis, and how we try to engage in like skill workouts, and that stuff matters. And those guys need to feel the same juice and energy from me when I'm working out, working them out, as the guy that's, two spots ahead of them in the starter, and, the guy that gets all the attention from opposing teams. So that takes, I think, having a great staff that's aligned from a values standpoint. And I think we do that. So I love that you pointed it out, because I think it's something that doesn't get talked about anywhere near enough. And I think it's a really, really big deal. I really think it's how winning is I shouldn't say winning. It's how, like, reaching your potential and overachieving, whatever that means. That's how that's done, is those people matter, and their engagement really, I think, can steer the ship one way or the other.
Yeah, I agree. I think overachievement is really a good way to look at it. I think when you have a roster from 1 to 12 or 1 to 15 or 1 to 25 or whatever it is, when everybody's bought in and everybody's rowing that boat in the same direction, I think it makes it much, much easier to accomplish things that maybe your just raw talent says that you shouldn't be accomplishing. And it's rare, I think, to see a team that overachieves that isn't together. Sometimes maybe they achieve what they are capable of, but you rarely see a team that overachieves that doesn't talk about having great chemistry or just having great people or really enjoying being around each other, whether that's on or off the floor. And I think that's critically important when you look at how you develop the success of your team, is making sure that everybody is on the same page. If you have an existing podcast or are looking to launch your own pod but aren't sure where to start, the team at My Podcast Manager can help. Our podcast team works behind the scenes so you can do what you do best. We'll help you launch your podcast, make it sound great, and free up your time for the more enjoyable parts of podcasting. If you're ready to put your podcast editing, production, and promotion on autopilot with a trusted team of podcasting professionals, visit mypodcastmanager.com to get started. I want to jump back to that recruiting question just so I don't forget it. And that is, when you talked about how important it was for you to build those relationships with local high school coaches, and that when you're going out and you're recruiting and you're talking to those high school coaches, that relationship is so important and that you're getting the truth from them. But we all know that the AAU scene is an important part of the recruiting piece in today's basketball world. So I just wanted to ask, how do you balance what you see when you watch a kid play high school basketball versus what you see when you watch them play AAU basketball? And maybe are you looking for different things in those two different settings, or are you looking, or just explain kind of how you balance out what you see in each setting?
Yeah, the evaluation, I think, is certainly a little bit different. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, we all have, I think, different skill sets and things that might appeal, to us as coaches. Like, I'm pretty biased to just skill. I think skill really matters, and guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot at a high level always, I think, will catch our eye. AAU, I think, is probably unfairly bashed in some basketball circles. Like, I think there's a lot of really good things that come from AAU, and guys getting to play with other high-level guys from other schools, and those relationships, I think, are important for kids and can really help them try to get better. I like the fact in AAU we get to see some guys that we will recruit play against some pretty special athletes. I think the opportunity to watch a guy that, we think is most of our top guys are good enough to play Division II, and a lot of times they get offers. That type of guy play against a guy going to play in the Big Ten, that's a pretty good opportunity to see that kid play against those level of athletes. And I really enjoy those type of games. I like AAU because I get to see a kid play at 8 a.m. sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, yep. you get to, everybody's telling you this, that, and the other thing about the kid. And it's like, hey, I'm sitting here with my coffee, ready to watch you play. Like, we're going to figure it out what kind of competitor he really is. And I think there's a lot of great opportunities that you get in AAU. I also think it's easier to look, if you have the athleticism, it's easier to look like a college player in AAU. I think high school is really where the evaluation can really take place, where you find out about all the other stuff. There's not really a scout or a game plan necessarily in AAU. I mean, guys are just kind of playing. Where in high school, man, I mean, if you're the best guy at, Medina and you're playing Brunswick, like, you better believe that those dudes at Brunswick have spent 3 straight days on, how they're going to not let you do what you want to do. And
absolutely,
it's just such a special thing. High school basketball is such a special thing. Like, I love being in the stands at games like that. I mean, I honestly, talking about it kind of gives me goosebumps. Like, when I watch those type of games in those environments, like, I almost feel somewhat sadness that, like, oh man, I never get to do this again. And watching a kid play in that environment against that level of, where it means that much to both schools, and the other coach is a great coach and he's got a plan, and you get to see how they handle that, I think is just a whole nother level. I mean, I think the best evaluation really gets done in watching high school games. AAU, I think, can get a lot. AAU helps you generate your database and your list. Here's the guys that we want to look at and evaluate, but watching them in a high school game is just, to me, that is the ultimate determination of what's your chance to see what they're going to be like, or what you hope they will be like for you, and how they, you hope they progress, and what your plan for developing them, and the role that you hope they will be in someday for you. So I love high school basketball, but I also appreciate AAU. I think there's a lot of really good things, and it's a great chance for coaches to see a lot of players. And there's a lot of really good things that can come out of that as well. But I'm just biased to watching a guy in high school. And I don't know that, like, D1 coaches get to do that as much as we do. I mean, I'm at a high school game every Tuesday night, every Friday night, every Saturday night, unless we're just too far away at a road game that I can't make it. I mean, we're at high school games all week. So maybe I'm just biased because I get to do that, but I just think it's the best. I think it's the best.
How many games for a kid that you're going to recruit and bring into the program, how many of his high school games are you going to see in a season?
So, man, recruiting at our level is it's a grind.
Never ending.
It's never ending, and it's also it's hard because we can't offer guys scholarships. So in essence, we do have to recruit more guys, but how you only have so many assistants. Your staff is only so many people, and we can only be in one place at a time. And, we generally have 4 guys on the road, 3 for sure, and sometimes a 4th. So every Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, the 3 of us for sure are at a game. And I think the biggest thing that we try to do when we recruit our top guys is we're showing up not really to evaluate them after we've seen them enough. It's to show them how serious we are and how much we want them. I mean, we really try to hone in on guys we think are BW guys, and go all in on them. Like, if you're a top guy for us, a member of our staff is generally at most of your games. So if those are 22 regular season games, we're probably at 18 of them, 17 of them. I mean, that's just how we do it. Like, we don't recruit 50 guys. We recruit, we have anywhere between, 20 visits on average is probably an average year. That's probably might be a little bit high. It might be closer to 15 to 18. But if you're a top guy, I mean, that's how we try to show them that we're serious and how much we value what they can bring, and that we do have a plan, and we're excited about what they, how their role will grow over their career. We think they're a great fit, and a lot of times we know they're going to get offers, but we feel like the experience that they can have at BW as a player and as a student and as a, socially and everything is worth the financial investment. So we go all in, and obviously when you don't get that guy, it really hurts. But when you do, I feel like the relationship is already there. And by the time we get them, it's just, we can hit the ground running. So, at every level, you've got guys you really want that, you think are A's, and guys that are B's that you think are great program guys and you want to get. But, the guys we really want, I mean, we're there all the time.
So if you have a kid that you're going to go see 17 or 18 of their high school games in a 22 game season, I'm assuming at that point that you've had a conversation with the kid where it's not just a one-sided thing where you're like, man, this kid would be perfect. He's a great fit. And on the other side, the kid is also saying, hey, I'm definitely interested in coming to BW, versus the kid who you might think is a great fit, but he's maybe holding out because he thinks he's going to be a Division II player, or he's saying, I'm not sure that Division III basketball, or I'm not sure BW is the place for me. Explain just kind of how that works in terms of, does there need to be that mutual interest in order for you to be able to put in that kind of time, or is sometimes the kid in your mind just so perfect for what you're trying to do that you try to change the kid's mind?
Almost always mutual interest.
Okay.
There might be I'm sure there's been one case maybe where that hasn't been the case. We're going to chase that guy, and try to change his mind, but almost always a mutual interest because of the time that we invest. I mean, and every place I think is just a little different, and the fit. When you go visit a place and you're around the coaches and you're around the players, like, you get a feel for, is this somewhere that could be home? And once a kid visits, we generally feel like we've got a pretty good gauge on whether or not we feel like there was a connection, like a real connection. And, over the next month, that relationship after the visit, I think is critical. And then we have a pretty good idea of how that's going to go, like without having to really, straight up ask them, like, hey, well, give me your top three right now. We know that the interest is reciprocated, because we always try to recruit great kids from great families. And we tell them straight up, like, hey, the best thing you can tell us is you're coming, and the second best thing you can tell us is that you're not, or you're not interested. And we'll tell them the same thing to tell other schools, like, hey, if you're coming to BW, like, let's just commit. And tell these other guys, like, it's coaching's a fraternity. Like, a lot of the guys that, I'm pretty tight with a lot of guys that, a lot of coaches in our league, like, I don't want those guys wasting their time. And if the roles were reversed and I'm chasing around a kid that we're not going to get, and everybody knows it, and I'm the only guy that doesn't know it, like, somebody just tell me. I'll stay home. I'd love to see my kids more during basketball season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Put your resources where they're going to be valuable, right?
Yeah, that's the key. And that's the hardest piece of recruiting. That's why I think it's a moving target. And at our level, you're constantly evaluating how to best use your resources and manpower to maximize, the recruiting class. And that doesn't, to me, always mean like how many guys we're going to get. It's getting the right guys and making sure that we're investing the time and we're consistent. When we tell a guy he's the top guy, we want to be consistent in our actions in showing him that he's a top guy and showing up consistently. And, it's a constantly moving target that we're always trying to evaluate. How can we be more efficient? How can we be more efficient? And, but you just can't fake the work. And at our level, the work a lot of times is getting in your car and driving all over the place. You can't fake that. And there's just I don't know that there's a shortcut. Like, we can talk all we want about trying to be as efficient as we can be, but coaching, it's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. And, you can't cheat the work. Like, you gotta do the work.
Yeah, there's no question about that. From our conversation, I can tell that you love high school basketball. I can tell you love playing it. I can tell now that you love going to games and you love the coaches. And so I think back to the beginning of your career, and was there ever a thought of going the high school coach teacher route, or how did you end up with being in the college, being at the college level as opposed to the high school level?
Yeah, good question. I certainly did think about being a high school coach, and I remember being early in my college career. My own high school coach, had such a significant impact on me. And he still is that guy to me, and he always will be. But once I got to college and got into a college program and everything about it, I kind of knew pretty early, man, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to do it for a living. I want this to be what I do. Not that I don't want to teach 5 classes of English or something, because I think I would really love that. And I think in a lot of ways, I honestly think it would be kind of good for me. to have that and
right.
and just those relationships. And I'd pour myself into it because I don't really have a lot of gears. I kind of just am in like park or overdrive. But I just wanted to do it as a profession. And high school coaches, man, a lot of the good ones around here, like they pretty much do it as a profession too. I mean, those guys are, they work at their craft like crazy, and then they got to teach a full load of classes, which is great, and they're part of the community. But I just always once I got to college, I always thought about myself as a college coach, and I was just really fortunate that I got a great opportunity to be a graduate assistant at a school in the conference that I played in at Defiance. And really, I didn't know. I mean, I remember being so excited that I got the opportunity. I didn't really have a backup plan. Like I was like, this is what I want to do. Like I'm going to find a GA job. And I was really, really lucky to get it at Defiance. And I didn't know this at the time, how lucky I was, but it was the head coach who was full-time. This was at the time how we were staffed at Defiance. And then it was me as a GA. And we were the two that were there in the office every day, doing the work. And I was 22 years old, right out of college, thrown in the fire as an assistant coach. And it was like the best thing that ever happened to me. I actually got to coach college basketball at 22. And I don't know that if I'm a GA at Kent that I get to really do that stuff that I got to do. I was relied on as the main assistant right out of college. Like what an incredible opportunity. And that was a huge part of what I think propelled me into being a college coach. Like if I don't have that opportunity, you know what? I don't know. I mean, I know you had my buddy, Dan DeCrane on, like his journey to becoming a high school coach is kind of a crazy one. And maybe I end up doing something like that and getting, teaching certificate and being in a high school if I don't get the GA job. But that just kind of propelled me to my college career. And I'm just forever so grateful for that.
I think being in that situation where you're thrown in and it's the old conundrum here of you get to versus you have to. You had to do all those things because you were the second in command on the totem pole there. But yet, really, the way you looked at it and the way it turned out is it wasn't that you had to do all those things. It's that you got to do all those things. And by getting to do all those things, you learned all the different ins and outs, all the different roles, all the different things that had to be done. And then as you have slowly moved up the ladder, you understand all those different pieces. And I'm sure that helps you better relate to your current assistant coaches. And as you look ahead in your career, it's going to help you to be more successful just because you have an understanding of what all those different pieces of a successful program look like because you had to do it when you were part of a bare bones staff.
Oh, no doubt. And I still try to. That's a hard thing is, the longer you're a head coach and the more you get removed from it, I really try to not take that stuff for granted, and there's still moments where, stuff will happen. Like I told you, man, Brian Schmidt is my full-time assistant. He's the best. And there'll be times, I think it was when his wife was having their first, and, I had to do something like I hadn't done in like years, maybe it was like the key to the closet that like the scoreboard's in. And I realized like, man, I don't know that I have this key and I don't know that I can get this done without some help, not taking that kind of stuff for granted is just sometimes those moments I think as a head coach, like bring you back to just appreciating having great help and great assistance. Cause they're really you've been in basketball a long time. That's the backbone of great programs. I really, really believe that. I think the backbone of great programs are great, loyal, high character, hardworking, people oriented that are invested in the kids, assistant coaches. You can't convince me otherwise. I just think that is the key. And those reminders, man, are good ones.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So talk to me about what you've learned in your career as an assistant that you feel like helped you when you first got the opportunity to be a head coach at Defiance and then moving on again to what you've been able to build at BW. What did you learn as an assistant that really propelled you to the success that you've been able to have as a head coach?
Yeah, I worked for 3 different guys, which was huge. So I was hired by John Miller my first year at Defiance as a GA. He got a great opportunity to go back to his alma mater at Hanover in Southern Indiana after my first year. And then, new head coach my second year as a GA, which was Kyle Brumman, who's currently the head coach at Wabash. So I got to work for 2 guys in 2 years. Incredible opportunity. Great coaches, but we all do it different. So we all have different philosophies and ways of doing things. And then I got hired by Duane at BW, and Duane Sheldon, I would say, has had as big of an impact on me as a man as anybody in my life. Especially the same could be true, especially when it comes to coaching. What I learned, I think, being with him for 5 years, was him and I saw basketball the same way. Like, we all see the game different. And if there was a weakness with Duane and I for 5 years, we see the game the same way, like really, really see it the same way, which can probably hurt us at times, maybe not enough difference of thought and that kind of stuff. I mean, we were pretty much, our thought process and mindset was pretty much spot on all the time. But where he, I think, really prepared me to be ready to be a head coach, Duane's a leader, and I think his ability and focus in blocking out the noise and listening to what the people that matter, and I think having the ability to do that with a level of focus that I think is pretty rare, was huge for me, because when your first year as a head coach, I mean, it's a whirlwind. Like, everybody doesn't understand. If you haven't gone through it, I don't know that you could understand really what it's like just moving one seat over. And, it doesn't probably seem like that big of a deal to somebody on the outside, maybe that hasn't coached or been around athletics, but what an incredible change. I knew I was ready for it, but when I got there, the volume of decisions and how each one of those decisions either reinforces the things that you say you're about as a program and a coach and a man, or it doesn't reinforce that. And I think the volume of those on a day-to-day basis, in and outside the office, on the court, off the court, that was at times overwhelming. But I think because of, really the relationship that I had with Duane and kind of watching him do that he has such a unique, I think, ability to simplify things. And that's really, I think, our job as coaches, to simplify the message, to simplify the system offensively, to simplify the plan defensively, so guys can go execute with aggression and they understand. And our job is to add clarity, not add all these different options and complicate stuff. And that's just as important when I became a head coach, I found out, in my own thought process and the focus that I had to have and the ability to kind of block out the noise and simplify my ability to make decisions. And I think because I watched Duane do that at a really, really high level, I think it set me up to, I don't know that I did it well my first year. I tried my best. And I think I was able to do that because I worked for him. And to some degree, you have to really not worry about what other people are doing, what other people are thinking. I think that's the hardest thing when you become a first year head coach, is not like doing all this stuff because that was how anybody else did it. And for me, it was like, not just because Duane did it this way. I had to kind of do it my way and figure that out for me every day. And I think having this, the ability to not worry so much about other people, that's a big deal when you become a head coach. I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I believe that. I'm pretty sure that when you step into that chair for the first time, and now suddenly the decisions that you used to make behind closed doors and as an assistant and give your suggestions and say, hey, we should do this.
Yeah.
And the head coach either says, all right, yeah, we're going to do that, or no, we're not going to do that. None of those things really show up publicly on your record underneath your name. And then all of a sudden, when you're a head coach, you realize that these decisions that you're making are things now that there's going to be more people than just your 3 assistants weighing in on. There's going to be a lot of people that are now going to weigh in on those decisions you make. And I'm sure that the way you're perceived, especially as a first-year head coach, and you're trying to find your way and feel your way through, how do I go about doing this? I'm sure it's difficult to tune out that noise and tune out the opinions of people on the outside, especially when you've worked for and are following somebody who's as successful as Duane was, obviously, at BW over the course of his career. And it's got to be a huge, huge challenge. So as you were preparing, and with the idea in the back of your mind that at some point you're going to get an opportunity to be a head coach, and you wanted to get that opportunity, as you said, every coach does things slightly different, and we all have to find our way in terms of what works for us, what we're comfortable with, what we like doing, what we don't like doing. So as you were going through as an assistant, were you keeping mental notes, a notebook, a computer file of things that, if I get an opportunity to be a head coach, here's some things that I've seen that I believe that I like, that I'm going to try. And then here's some things that I've seen that maybe I'd like to try to do it a little bit differently, or maybe not do one of these things that I saw. Was that something that you were consciously doing in preparation to become a head coach?
I was. I had, a giant notebook. That's probably more digital now than it was when I was an assistant, but from, everything that we did, that when I was a college player, everything that we did the 2 years I was a GA, and everything that we had done at BW and that other people had done. I think as an assistant, one of the luxuries that you have, like I did every scouting report when I was the assistant at BW. So you have so many opportunities to like dive into and trying to get inside the other programs and like what they're doing. And there's so many ways to play the game, right? I mean, you just look at our league and there's a lot of different styles. I mean, there are pressing teams. There's, you'll get zoned some. There are teams that are, going to throw it in the post and really try to pound it and play through their post guys and play inside out. And there are 5 out teams that you're going to have to guard 5 guys that can shoot it and drive it. I mean, there are just so many different systems, right, that you can play and prepare against. I think that's one of the best things as an assistant coach is so much of the film that I watched was of other teams. So I was constantly evaluating concepts that I really liked and that kind of thing. And the hard part, if I'm going to be honest, Mike, when you become I can speak for myself. When I became a head coach at Defiance, there's so much noise and things are happening so fast that honestly, you just kind of go with what you know the best. And then that evolved. It really evolved. Like I kind of went with some similar style things that we were at BW and the way that we played, our defensive principles, our offensive principles, and then it kind of evolved from there. But yeah, I think that's a big deal as an assistant coach. I think you need to constantly be taking inventory of everything from, at the X's and O's of the games to some player development stuff. Like there's so much access to information now. It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy what you can find on YouTube and some of these player development guys that put stuff out for free. Like it kind of boggles my mind. I've stolen a lot of stuff from them, but I think that's the big deal as an assistant, that you do have a method and a system to keep track of that kind of stuff, or else you just lose it. Like, I don't know about you, but our lives are happening pretty fast. Like I got to remember when I'm picking the kids up and when I'm dropping them off.
Absolutely. You don't have to tell me that. You don't have to tell me that twice.
I don't remember what the Heat ran last night that I really liked if I don't write it down. So, I think that's a big deal. Like having a system in place, whether it's digitally. Mine was more pen and paper when I was an assistant. It's way more digital now. I email myself. Like that's how I remember stuff, right? Like I will email my stuff, email myself, these notes and no matter where I'm at, right? I've got them at like 2 a.m. where I wake up sometimes and I have I'll go through it all the time. And it's kind of funny sometimes the things that I email myself, but that's how I do it now. I mean, I have a giant, digital file, but very important, I think, to have those systems in place.
Yeah, I think that there's no doubt about the fact that in today's society, for sure, you have to be able to keep on top of things. And I'm sure that you found too that once you became a parent, that it also puts, more of a demand on your time for sure, and in a positive way.
In a very positive way, yep.
But nonetheless, it is one of those things that when you start talking about the ambition that you have as a basketball coach and how much you love coaching the game and being a part of it and being around it, when you have a family, it becomes more of a challenge to be able to go out. And I'm sure that going out and seeing 4 high school games that when you were 23, it was not an issue. You were just got in the car and you didn't have to worry about who had to be where or what had to happen or who you were responsible for, because you were only responsible for you. And then as you grow up and you mature and you have a family and you get kids and all that kind of thing, it becomes at least more of a challenge in terms of you have to be more organized. You have to probably be more intentional about what you do and how you do it, your communication within your family and all those kinds of things. And I think that's something that you mentioned earlier when you talked about high school coaches and how they're doing things full time. And I have no question that on every level of basketball, we talked about at the college level with the, Division I guys in the summertime, and you think about all the recruiting that you're doing, just the amount of time that you have to spend as a coach in order to have a successful program, I think only continues to increase and go up as time moves on, simply because there's so many people who want to be involved in coaching, whether that's at the high school level or whether that's at the college level. There's so many people competing for the same jobs. And quite frankly, you mentioned also about just the sheer amount of information out there. There's so many people that are out there waiting to critique your program. There's a lot of self-proclaimed experts out there that that like to weigh in with their opinions on coaches, whether that be parents of players who are in your program, whether that be outsiders, whether that just be people on social media. It's kind of incredible just what's out there. And so the coaching profession, I think, continues to evolve and become more challenging. But I think the one thing that's not debatable is that it continues to require more and more time, and that has to be balanced with those coaches who have a family. I think that's one of the themes that we've heard over and over again, is the challenge of balancing your family with your coaching. So talk a little bit about how that works for you and your family.
That's obviously a big deal. It starts with having a great wife, I think, is number one. Coaching's not, being married to a college coach is not for everybody. And I think where that really fits in is, my wife is as big of a part of our program as like an assistant coach is in a lot of ways. I mean, she's incredibly invested. I think she's a relationship person. The most important thing in her life are her relationships with the people she cares about the most. Obviously me, our kids, her family, my family, right? But she's one of the things that really drew me to her was she was a great friend. Like, I noticed that right away, and her friends meant a lot to her. So as we started dating and getting more serious, she still maintained those relationships like at a really high level. And that to me, that said a lot. And that has only continued as we've, especially when I've become a head coach. Like, she's very invested in the lives and the process of college basketball. And I think that's a really, really, really big deal. The other piece is one of the things that I love about BW and why I feel incredibly lucky to be the head coach here is it's a little bit easier here because most of the guys we are recruiting are Northeast Ohio guys. And we are blessed to be in an area where I think everybody talks about Ohio high school football, but I think basketball is as good. Ohio high school basketball is as good as, whatever, name the state. I just think and especially Northeast Ohio, and we are able to recruit from a radius and have so many good players within an hour drive of us, an hour and 15-minute drive of us, that I'm able to come home from practice and eat dinner and see my family and then go to a game, and that I know that might not sound like a big deal. It might be 20 minutes or even less, but it is a really big deal. Like that 15 to 20 minutes is a big deal for me to see my kids, because I can't put them to bed when I'm out during the season. Like, I don't put them to bed much at all. And that's hard. I mean, that's hard. Like, missing that stuff, I think, is really, really hard. And our kids aren't old enough where I can really take them with me recruiting. But when they are, they'll come on the road with me, and it's a family affair. Like, everybody at BW athletic department knows our kids. My son it's his favorite place to be. You know, he's about to be 5, right? I mean, him and a ball in the gym is like where he wants to be. You know, he wants to come with me all the time. And I just don't know. There's really no like work-life balance. I think that's actually like a mistake if you are in coaching of thinking it that way, because if you're trying to like clock in, clock out, you'll just get so much anxiety over that. You're always thinking about the other thing, where I think it's more of like work-life integration. Like we're constantly, our family is just constantly a part of our program. And, you know, it's early mornings and it's late nights, but like we're kind of all in it together. And I think that's a really big deal. And the best thing that ever happened to me, Mike, was having kids as a coach. I think being a parent that's coaching other parents' kids is a big deal. I think I understand that way more once we had kids of our own. And I think it's an incredible, incredible blessing that our kids grow up in the gym and they grow up at BW and they grow up around our guys. That's why, selfishly, why we're so critical of who we bring into the program. I mean, these guys are like, my kid's going to be at the back of the bus with them, you know, on the way home
exactly.
from, you know, the way home from
so
Heidelberg.
true.
Like the last thing I need is, you know, a bunch of idiots back there, you know, teaching my kid some things he doesn't need to know at, you know, 7, but, or 8 or whatever he goes on the bus. But I just think that piece is a really big deal. Like that integration of coaching and my family, and it all kind of, you know, I mean, once this pandemic gets out of here, I mean, our players will be at our house all the time. And I don't know if that's normal or not normal, or if that makes me like a player's coach or not. I really care about our players and I really care about our family. So it kind of makes sense to me that they're integrated all the time.
I think that integration to me makes a ton of sense because, as you said, I think that when you try to compartmentalize those, it gets really, really difficult. And as you said, you have to have somebody at home who's supportive of making that integration real. But when you're both on the same page and you can do it, to me, I don't see how you could do it well and have them compartmentalized. It seems like that would be really, really difficult to put on one cape here and then put on another cape there and keep those two things separate. It seems like when you can integrate them and bring them both together, that's going to be the best of both worlds, because now the basketball side of it that you love becomes part of your family, and the family side of it that you love becomes part of the basketball. And when you meld them together, it just seems like you're going to end up with the best of both worlds. It just seems like that to me is the way that I would organize it if I was going to be a head coach and trying to run a program, whether it was a college or the high school level. I'd want to approach it the same way. I know you talked a lot about building relationships with players. Talk to me a little bit about how you develop those relationships day to day, and if there's anything maybe special beyond those normal interactions that you just would have before, after practice, those kinds of things. But is there anything maybe out of the ordinary that you do that you think is unique, or if you think some other coach could benefit in terms of how you build relationships with your kids at BW?
I don't know that there's anything I would say is unique, but one of the things that I think is a really, I don't know if it's a skill. I do think it's a skill that, you know, you can develop and work on. It's actually really easy for me, but I think it's you're doing a disservice to the players if you're not going to coach them however you feel you should coach them. If that's hard, if whatever your personality is, right? I mean, I think I am pretty intense without realizing that I'm pretty intense. You know, like I think from the outside, I would be labeled as pretty intense, where like I actually feel like I'm being pretty, you know, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm being that. That's not like the most intense version of me. But, you know, I think I'm going to coach our guys pretty hard. I just expect a level of urgency to the things that we're going to do. I expect a certain effort level. That's just who I am as a person. And I expect that from our guys. And I think the ability to, as soon as practice is over, you know, be able to turn it off and just detach from like whatever happened in practice, like being able to be mad at, you know, you as a player and not let that carry over even 2 minutes after practice to like me being mad at you as a person. You know, I mean, we have guys in our program that are like 4.0s and they're just great humans and they're great members of our campus community at BW. And I might have just ripped them because what? I mean, they can't hedge a ball screen like well enough, like, well, that's my job. Like, it's my job to try to get them to understand how important it is that they can do this as a part of our defensive plan. And if they can't and the breakdown happens, how that affects us. And sometimes I have to use forceful language. I have to I have to use a level of urgency to get them to do that as hard as I want them to do it. But as soon as practice is over, like, I kind of want to hang out and like catch up and talk. And I think one of the things that I honestly struggle with is like, I'll hang out after practice for like way too long. I was like supposed to pick up dinner and, at 6 and it's like 6:30 and we're still talking about, whatever, whatever.
I've been there many times,
and to me, I think it's the most critical piece of it, because I know that I'm far removed from being a player, but I do know this: none of us ever as players wanted to feel like we were solely a means to an end for a coach. We were just a way for them to accumulate wins on their professional journey in coaching. None of us wanted to feel that way. I assume, I don't know. I know I didn't. I mean, guys I played with didn't want to feel that way. But we want to be coached hard. We're trying to get better. We want to win. But I do think the ability to have a relationship outside of that practice, and really even like maybe 2 minutes is like a little bit of an exaggeration, but like seeing a guy the morning after we lose on Wednesday and he doesn't play real great, like, I think that's an incredible opportunity for me when I see that kid at 9 a.m. between classes the next morning. I think that's an incredible opportunity for me and how I handle that situation with that kid. If am I going to pout and be a little baby because we lost and I'm mad at him because, he shot 2 for 11? Or, am I practicing what I preach? Like, is that relationship still as important to me after we lose on Wednesday as it was, when we won on Wednesday? I think that's an important thing that you have to be conscious about. And I don't know, my assistant's the same way. We don't really have to try too hard with that, but I do think that's a big deal. I think that's a big piece of the relationship, and being able to separate, like, hey, I'm going to coach you hard as a basketball coach, man, but I love you. And, I didn't know that, your girlfriend broke up with you, or, we forget about that stuff, man. The older we get, like, what was really going on in our lives at that time at 20, 21, like there was a lot. And I think the ability to just separate between the lines and outside the lines, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that self-awareness of just being introspective and thinking about how your players are going about their day-to-day life and what's happening for them and how they're going to perceive it, and then thinking about it from your own perspective and what kind of coach do I want to be and what kind of relationships do I want to build, and am I going to do the things that I talk about, or am I just going to be a guy who talks about them? To me, the word that always comes back to, and I think you said it, in so many ways, is just being intentional about what you do in terms of building those relationships with the kids and making sure that you're acting with their best interest at heart. And that can mean, like you said, coaching them hard and being tough on them. Like, that's in their best interest to be able to help them improve as players and as people eventually. But then it's also off the court, making sure that they understand that the relationship is about more than just basketball. It's about what we can build off the court so that 20 years from now, they can call you up on the phone and be like, hey, coach, I'm getting married, or hey, coach, I got a new job, or whatever it might be. Because we all know as coaches that those are some of the most rewarding things that could possibly ever happen to you, when somebody who's, like I'm 50 now, and, I'll still have guys that I coach that'll say, they're now 35, 36 saying, hey, coach. And, my high school coach and my college coaches, I'm never going to call them by their first names, and I'm a 50-year-old man. I'm still going to call them coach, because it's just, again, that's the level of respect that they were able to, engender from me. And I think it's something that you have to do as a coach, is to be intentional about what kind of a coach you want to be and what kind of program that you want to run. And that being said, we're coming up close to an hour and a half. So I want to ask you one final 2-part question. And it's going to be, the first part of it is, one, what do you see as the biggest challenge that you have in front of you once we get through the pandemic, because that's a challenge for everybody. But once we get through that, what do you see as the biggest challenge for you there at BW to continue the success that you've had so far? And then number two, what's the biggest joy when you get out of bed in the morning? What's the one thing that gets you so excited when you first wake up that you can't wait to get into the office and get started working on?
Yeah, two great questions. So I'll start with the joy one. So I feel like we've talked a lot about recruiting, and rightfully so, and how important it is to have good people. And, winning and losing is hard. We all hate losing, right? I mean, it's not fun as a coach. But I feel great joy knowing we have good dudes. And I just don't know a better way to put it than that. Like, we have guys I like being around, and I can win with them, I can lose with them, and we can go through this process and this roller coaster together. And I feel joy and confident that we have great people in our program, and coaching is a crazy profession, right? And if, let's say, whatever, someday they decide we're not doing things, we're not winning enough games, whatever the fact might be, I'll feel all right. Like, I'll be all right, because the guys we did it with were great guys, and they're great guys now, and they were great guys before, and I really enjoy being around them. And that might sound corny, but I coach basketball. I don't have to coach a bunch of other crap. I don't have to worry about, we're not dealing with a bunch of issues all the time. We just won't put up with it. We don't have to have a lot of conversations with guys about their academics and going to class, or how to act right off of the court, or what our expectations are socially. We don't really I have to spend very little, if any, time on that. I get to coach basketball, and I get to be around these guys. And I think that's I don't know if I would feel that way if we had guys that were getting in trouble and it wouldn't be fun for me. I would struggle. I just don't have the patience for it. So I think that's the biggest joy, the piece that I get joy from in developing elite competitors. Like, I don't know that any of us are just inherently elite competitors. I know that I wasn't. Like, I think it's a learned thing and a mindset that is really, really, really important. And I think people that enjoy competition, not winning and losing. Like, I hate the question, like, do you love to win or do you hate to lose? Like, well, everybody hates to lose. I mean, we all hate to lose, and we all enjoy winning. But I think elite competitors, man, they love the challenge. Like, they love the competition. They're not afraid to fail. And I think ultimately that's what we're trying to do. And because we have good people, like, I think that journey of trying to get guys to that place where, like, whether they make the shot or they miss the shot with the game on the line, like, they're so excited to take it that when they miss it, it doesn't affect their ability or their excitement to take the next one. Like, I think that's kind of what life is all about. And that's what elite competitors have. And that's a really hard place to get. But that wakes me up in the morning, and having good guys and chasing that's a big deal. And I think it's a life thing. I don't necessarily think it's a basketball thing. Like, that's how you got to approach life, or you're going to struggle to consistently be happy. If you're just afraid to fail or take chances or whatever, I just think you got to be that way. So chasing that, I think, is the joy piece. The challenges at BW is, we tell recruits this. I mean, I think this is a real thing. I'm not afraid to say it. Like, we want to win, on the national level. Like, we want to compete nationally. We want to get to the Final Four. We want to win a national championship. We want to obviously win our conference, and the value of our league. We play in such a great conference. And at our level, at the Division III level, it's a top 5 in the country league. I mean, it's like the Big Ten, and everybody's really, really good. And that's the challenge is, for us at our level, getting to the NCAA tournament is the hardest part. There are 20, we call them Pool C bids at our level, but what would be at the Division I level, at-large bids, people that are selected to be in the NCAA tournament. They don't get an automatic bid. There's only 20, and I think Division I, men's basketball, I think there's like 38 or 36, somewhere around there, but there's significantly, I think it's 36, but there's significantly more. I mean, 16 more of those bids. It's hard to get there. And our conference is a bear. I mean, everybody's good, top to bottom. Like, a couple of years ago, the 2 teams that didn't make our conference tournament, they finished 9th and 10th. 1 through 8 made the conference tournament. The 9th place and 10th place team, they've both won the national championship at some point. Ohio Northern won it in 1993, I believe. Otterbein won it in like 2002. And they didn't make our conference tournament a couple years ago. Like, that's how good it is. And they were good. I mean, they beat people. They beat top half teams that year. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge is what it takes, day to day, game to game to get to where we want to be in the NCAA tournament is just, at our level, it's just harder. Like, if you don't win the conference tournament, it's harder. And the time we were able to do it, we won our conference tournament and went to the NCAA tournament. We were a game away from the Sweet 16. We lost in overtime in the second round. And, we're continuing to try to build on that. And I feel great joy for the guys that we're trying to do it with. I feel great joy because, you've coached, the guys I'm doing it with as a coach. Like, that is a huge piece of it, man. We have a ton of fun. Probably too much fun sometimes. It's like an hour. It's like, dude, we haven't talked about practice yet.
Right.
Like, we should probably. I came in here to talk about practice, and we've been talking about our frustration with the Browns or whatever the case might be. But I relish that challenge, man. I really do. Like, while it's the challenge, I also think that challenge is part of the joy piece as well. Like, I almost think it's the answers are certainly connected because I enjoy that. I enjoy playing in the conference that we play in, especially in September when we're not playing. Obviously, it's sometimes that joy piece is hard when you're like, you're going to Marietta on Saturday and you got John Carroll on Wednesday, and then you go to Wilmington on the next Saturday. Like, that grind is for real. But I feel fortunate and blessed to play in the league that we do, because if you can compete at the top of our league, you can compete with anybody in the country, and not every league has that, and I think we're lucky to have that, and so I don't worry that impact that has on like my coaching record or whatever. We just relish that opportunity, and we try to recruit guys and coach guys and develop guys that look at that the same way.
Yeah, day in, day out, that's got to push you to be at your very, very best. And I think anybody who you said earlier, like, when you're a competitor, that matters. And I think, anybody who's a competitor, you want to step out on the floor against the best that you can step out on the floor against and challenge yourself and be okay with whatever those results are, as long as you were giving your best. And that's a great way to wrap this up. I want to give you a chance to share how people can connect with you, share your social media account, how they can find out more about your program at BW, and then I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
Yeah, anybody that wants to reach out, happy to do that. I mean, you can always connect. Email is THEIL @B as in boy w.edu is a great way. I'm on Twitter. I'm probably not the most active, Twitter poster. My Twitter game is. Man, it fluctuates. Probably a lot like my jump shot right now. I mean, it's kind of hit or miss. I don't shoot enough to like be a good shooter anymore. Some days I get hot, so that's my Twitter game's not great. But I certainly, I'll get on there. Is @BW Coach Heil is my Twitter. So happy, man, for anybody that wants to reach out and that actually listened to me talk for this long. It's like, if they made it here to this point, like, they should certainly reach out. I mean, it's it's an hour and a half of me talking. Like, I feel like they're pretty committed at this point.
Absolutely, no question about that. Tom, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your schedule. It's been a blast getting a chance to talk hoops with you tonight. Really feel like we learned a lot about what makes you tick, what makes your program at BW so special. And again, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us this evening. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.